This week on Head to Head, the Mandalorian trailer review.
You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
Hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this podcast. So, basically, this weekend, they've had this whole Call of Duty Modern Warfare alpha. Have you heard about the new game?
I've heard about it. I think I've seen even some previews or something about it.
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah, okay.
It's absolutely incredible. I mean,
is it kind of like Ghost?
Yes, in a way, but in the sense of with Ghost, you can actually do like what do they call it, like contextual leaning or something like that, to where your guy can actually like peek around corners and stuff.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, but this, like, the maps are really cool. You know, it's by far one of the more detailed ones, and even like if you're walking through like bushes and stuff, they'll rustle when you walk through them. The guns are actually more realistic. Like, it's not so crazy like with Black Ops 4, which I actually play almost every night. I try to play like 2 games a night. It's cool, and it's actually probably one of my favorite Call of Duty games, but the problem with it is, you know, it's kind of like the guns don't actually react totally like real life, and, you know, you get all these like cartoonish, you know, you can do all these like crazy things to your guy and stuff, and it's cool, but I don't know, it kind of strips some of the realism out, and that's not even so much what I have a problem with, but it gives people sometimes an unfair advantage. You know, because you could put all these crazy attachments, and if you're spending all these Call of Duty points and stuff, you can,
right.
You know, you
Make
can
it
do
like
stuff.
some super weapon, like.
Yeah, but I mean, with this, they actually, you know, I saw some making of footage for it and everything, and they actually did this whole thing to where they recorded like each gun firing, like 6 or 7. They had all these different microphones up, and just playing the alpha. Which the only thing they put in the alpha is like this like 4-person gunfighting, so it's like 2 versus 2. Because it is the alpha. The beta comes out September 12th, I think. That's when I think, you know, the more traditional, you know, multiplayer team deathmatch thing will probably happen.
Okay.
But they actually wanted to ground it a little bit more. They wanted, you know, the weapons to be a little bit more realistic. They wanted the attachments. You can put all kinds of weird attachments to it, so you're not going to have the attachment limit. So yeah, it was actually really cool, and I was really, really happy to see it. But it's one of those things where, you know, if you're into Call of Duty at all, you'll probably love this game because the maps are more immersive, and it actually feels, I think, more immersive.
Okay.
So, you know, if any of you guys are into Call of Duty, you know, hit us up. Let us know what you guys think. If you've played the alpha or if you've heard Modern Warfare, love to get your thoughts. But it's time to put down the gun and pick up the glass.
Yes.
All right, let's go with the Cantina. All right, so what do we got first on our Cantina?
Well, the second and final season of Star Wars Resistance will be coming up. And I thought it was actually going to go more. You know, but I kind of understand that, you know, timeline wise, you know, they're kind of.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that they're doing now with a lot of the series. And I know they're going to do this probably with the Disney Plus. But I mean, even going to Cobra Kai, you know, which of course is a YouTube. Well, it used to be YouTube Red. Now it's YouTube Premium. They basically had the whole story. You know, now whether or not YouTube keeps renewing it is always the question. But they have, I forgot what they said, something like a 5 or 6 or 7 season story arc or something. And then, you know, they'll probably end it after that. And that's what I think is really cool. Even Rebels, you know, Dave Filoni pretty much had like a 5 season or whatever it was story arc, and he carried it through, and then it was done. Where a lot of times what'll happen is, as long as the network, you know, keeps renewing the season or the series, they'll just go, okay, cool, we'll make even more stories, and then they eventually run out of ideas. You know, like I think Married with Children suffered from that a little bit, although they were unfairly canceled, like at the last minute, in my opinion, when they were actually getting their whole mojo back.
Right.
But, you know, there's a lot of times where shows will end up getting stale because they're basically outliving their good ideas.
Yeah.
Resistance, I think, was always, like you said, it was going to be one of those finite series.
Yeah, it's kind of to bridge the gap, so to speak.
Yeah, but I thought it would go at least like 3, 4.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
The first season? No. I'm actually going to take some time and actually watch it all. Now that it's done, I can actually go back and just watch it all and just binge watch it.
Yeah, it was good. Like I said, I mean, it almost had the Rebels vibe where it started out a little, I guess, light. Mm-hmm. And then it got heavier. Yeah.
I mean, like with the appearance of Kylo Ren, especially going to be heavy in the second
the trailer
season.
was awesome for season 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the trailer was really cool. But I mean, I was really surprised at how much I really enjoyed that show. Because what happened was I would record it on my DVR, the whole season, and I watched like the first couple episodes, and I'm like, okay, it is definitely themed more towards kids, but adults can definitely get some enjoyment out of it. Mm-hmm. But then, I wouldn't be able to watch it for like long stretches, and then I would binge like maybe 3 episodes or something. And by the time I got to the end, I was just like, man, I'm really surprised on how, I guess, dark it actually got, but then also how good the series really was. Even though it did maintain that kids vibe a little bit, mm-hmm. It was still really, really, really good. I highly recommend the series, honestly.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, I'm going to actually binge watch the first season.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about it again when you actually watched it. So you're going to have to, is it on Netflix yet? I didn't actually check.
I'm not sure yet, but I probably can get it maybe like on Prime or something.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. All right. What do we got next?
So, our good old buddy, Rian Johnson.
Yes.
So, Rian Johnson has been talking about his approach to creating his new Star Wars trilogy. Now, of course, in the Star Wars world, a lot of people are still grieving, dealing with Rian Johnson.
Terrible. I mean, he's
Last
got
Jedi.
that new movie, Knives Out, basically coming out, and people are still giving him crap. It's like, dude, he's a good filmmaker. Leave him alone. He's actually made some good movies. It's like, okay, even if you didn't like The Last Jedi, the cinematography was really good. It was a good film. It just didn't necessarily go the way you wanted it to go.
Yeah, and Luke even said that.
Right?
But the thing is, in this particular context, he's been asked about the new trilogy that he's been working on, and he really wants to, once again, of course, push Star Wars into the next new direction. And his big thing is, we have to get away from the whole legendary type stuff. He's like, okay, we can't rest upon that. That's kind of been done already. Let's move forward. And I think that's what of course, we knew that's what he was really trying to do in The Last Jedi. And in some ways, I liked it. In other ways, not so much. But I think that's because he was playing with characters that we already knew. Because he often likened, everything to, like, well, if you looked at the original trilogy, each progressive movie, it got better and better. And, that's what we have to do, is make Star Wars better and better. But I think, like we've always said, that at that time, those characters were new to us. They were still being established and created. So by the time you get to now, when you're dealing with 7, 8, 9, these are characters that we've already grown to love. We know basically how they are and how they think. So yeah, we're going to have like, well, Han Solo wouldn't say that, or Luke wouldn't do that, or, whatever the case may be.
Well, what's interesting is, I mean, you even had the actors saying that during the time of the original trilogy. Because remember the big thing where before Han got frozen in carbonite, the original line was Leia said, I love you, and he said, I love you too. But then Harrison was like, I don't think Han would say that. And then he improvised the whole I know line, and that was perfect Han Solo. So, even then you had people that were starting to get attached to these characters and that would alter that. Yeah,
and he's talked to George Lucas apparently about pushing Star Wars to the next into a new direction and whatnot. And I think if he does his new trilogy, because it's like we've always said, it's fresh, it's brand new characters that we can kind of explore, and he can kind of create that world with them. I honestly think that Broom Kid is probably going to be the focus of that, though. Or he's going to be a part of that whole new...
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it makes me wonder if he's just going to... Because first of all, while he could do that, it depends on, well, first of all, it depends on really where this whole thing is set.
Yeah.
You know, what time period. Mm-hmm. The other thing, too, is that whether or not he wants to actually remind people of The Last Jedi, you know, it almost sounds like you would want to distance yourself from that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think he wants to distance himself from that in the sense of not dwelling on it. But I believe he's right. I believe that because...
Well, yeah, he's definitely right. It's just
how you do it. My thing is, if he's going to do it, I think it's just very important that he doesn't alter canon or basic lore.
Well, it's not just that. It's also, there's a certain template that you have to follow. And here's the problem with Rian Johnson's argument. Even though in a lot of cases, I agree with what he's saying, but the problem is he's going, well, you know, back then, you know, you didn't know all this stuff. Well, yeah, back then there wasn't this whole established Star Wars universe either.
Yeah.
You know, you can't make a Star Wars film in 20 whatever like you could in 1980 something. You know, I mean, it's like there's just too much out there. There's all these books, and I'm talking new canon. I don't even mean the legend stuff. You know, you got books, you got comics, you got all these movies. You have things, and you have an established template of what makes a Star Wars movie Star Wars. Now, it did sound from that article like he understands that, because he was talking about the spirit of the original trilogy. Yeah,
I think what he was just basically saying is that, like, you know, each progressive movie from New Hope to Empire to Return of the Jedi, like, it kept getting progressively better because George Lucas and the team kept pushing the boundaries and kept, you know, and I'm like, that's good.
Well, and they expanded the universe.
Yeah, they expanded the universe.
That's the biggest key. Now, if he goes and, like you said, you know, if he's not actually dealing with established characters.
Yeah, I mean, like, what I'm saying is, like, I don't, and I know that I'm being really extreme when I say this, but I'm just using this as an example. But, you know, in his new trilogy, he can't say, like, the Force is a person now.
Right.
And he could, you know, and he controls, like, okay, man. Like,
well, George almost did that with the midi-chlorians.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And that's my
people
point.
Didn't like that because now you're going more sci-fi than fantasy, and that's not a Star Wars thing. And, of course, George is over there going, hey, I'm the guy that made this.
Yeah.
You know, don't tell me, but it's kind of like, dude, you have to understand, art is like anything else. You know, you create it, but once it's out there, some of the ownership is with the fans now.
Yeah.
You know, and they're going to let you know what you want. I mean, otherwise, you just make movies that you show to your friends, you know, on weekends or something. But if you're out there trying to release something, you know, and make a statement, obviously it's every filmmaker's right to do so. But you have to take into account what the fans want. Now, where I think that George was on point was during the prequels. He actually looked at some of the things in the expanded universe that the fans loved and actually incorporated them into the prequels, including characters like Quinlan Vos is a great example. What else? Coruscant. It was actually called something else.
Yeah.
But because I think it was Timothy Zahn maybe that first called it that or whatever. He then changed the name of the capital city or planet or whatever to Coruscant. So, I mean, he actually threw a whole bunch of little Easter eggs in there too. So from that standpoint, I think it's cool. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, my whole thing is just don't do anything that's like, okay, that completely disrupts the mythos of what Star Wars is, you know, like.
Well, it's almost like in the expanded universe, right? Now, so they would somebody would come to Lucasfilm with the story idea. Now, they could tell virtually any story that they wanted, but there were certain parameters they would have to follow. Like sometimes Lucas would go, okay, no, you can't have Yoda do this or, you know, whatever. It's sort of like there's still things that you had to honor, but within that framework, you could tell any story you wanted. And this goes back to something I had said before. I wouldn't mind multiple genres. Like I've actually talked about a Star Wars horror film. Now, that would be pushing the boundaries big time.
Definitely.
But if you stuck within the framework of what makes Star Wars, and then, like you said, keep the mythos.
Yeah, I mean, like if you did something like a thriller or something like that, but it makes it centric to a Star Wars thing that we maybe relate to, like Dathomir, you know what I'm saying? Like with all the
Dathomir witches.
Yeah, like you can do a whole thing of like, okay, Darth Maul and what he went through and everything like that. Like if you want to cover that, you could, and you could make that a kind of a horror movie because that's kind of what it was.
Or you could even go slasher. You know, like there's one of my favorite Star Trek episodes. Yeah, you heard me. I said it. Was an episode called A Wolf in the Fold. And basically what it was they were visiting this planet on a shore leave kind of situation, and somebody got killed by a Jack the Ripper-like entity. And Scotty was always the one that was like holding the knife or something. You know, lights went out, and it kind of looked like he was the one doing it. Mm-hmm. And it was a total, like, whodunit kind of slasher movie. Like, there was a killer on the loose. And they had to figure out who it was and what was going on. So, I mean, that shows that even in the science fiction and or fantasy realm, you could have essentially a Friday the 13th Halloween-style movie.
Because, honestly, you can use, because we were already kind of talking about Dathomir, is... what was Darth Maul's brother?
Oh, yeah.
The big...
Right. Yeah, exactly.
See, he was out of control. It was like, you know, and they had to kind of... His rage was really, you know, out there. And so, yeah, you can use that, and it's like, okay, well, who is this guy? We got to stop him. How? You know... So you can do things like that.
You could do a lot of different things. You can have a romantic comedy in the Star Wars universe. You could have...
No, that's Han Solo too, by the way.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, the whole Leia Han thing was, in a sense, touching on that. But that's my point, is that you could actually have a whole bunch of different genres of movies, but have them take place in the Star Wars universe, and it would seem fresh. You could take, like, the old cliches and formulas of these genres, but you put it in the Star Wars universe, suddenly it's a fresh new thing. Mm-hmm. You know, so I mean, I think that if Johnson actually goes and he makes this trilogy, because first of all, you know, there's rumors every day that it's not even happening. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess it's good that he thinks it is, but you know, hey, Lord and Miller thought they were the directors of Solo, a Star Wars story too, until they weren't.
Right.
So who knows? I personally would like to see a Rian Johnson trilogy that is essentially his own story, and he's not continuing, because that's the thing. He was continuing J.J. Abrams' thing. Mm-hmm. And people talk about the rise of Skywalker. It's like, well, essentially the architect of the sequel trilogy is now making another film. So I think that the ideas that are presented in the film, they're going to be a little bit more balanced. But time will ultimately tell.
Yes, sir.
All right, what do we... Ooh, got some new stuff.
Yeah. So, you know, we're rounding out in the end of D23.
Yeah, we should note that, okay, so this episode's going to come out Monday.
The 26th.
Yeah, okay. But we're recording this on Saturday. You know, we usually record these on Friday or Saturday before they go out. So this is... When does D23 end? Is it...
Today.
Oh, it is today?
Yeah, I think it's only 2 days.
Okay. So we're on the last day of D23. So basically, we even waited till later in the day to record the episode, because we're like, great, we'll record something.
Yeah, we got news like as
Yeah, we were getting news even as we were about to record this thing.
Right.
So this just shows you like what's going on. If you guys are following D23 at all, and judging by social media, you are, you've seen that there's been a lot of news that's been pumped out over the last couple of days. So these next couple of podcasts, this week and next week's podcast, are pretty much dealing with these themes. So what do we got?
So, you know, I think it was 2 podcasts ago, you know, I was really anxious that we were actually going to get a new trailer at D23 for Rise of Skywalker. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, that didn't happen per se. We didn't really get a full trailer, but apparently there was a sizzle reel that was shown to the fans there, and will also be released Monday, August 26th.
right.
online.
Unfortunately, the day of the podcast.
Right, exactly.
You know, we're releasing on that day as well.
But, yeah.
Too bad we can't really comment on it.
But we got you next time.
Yeah.
But there were some images that were quite interesting. And some things that there was a lot of different synopses, or I won't say a synopsis, but there was a lot of different things that were spoken about as far as the sizzle reel. And a couple of things are that was in the sizzle reel that, you know, you have Vader's mask once again makes its appearance.
Yeah, because actually one of the things that they showed, if I'm not mistaken, was the same reel that was shown to the shareholders at that one meeting like a few months ago or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this one has Vader's mask, and this has a couple of different shots of Rey. Mm-hmm. One of like this upward shot of Finn, you know, doing some stuff. And it wasn't really a whole lot that you could really glean from it, from what I could, you know, read as far as to the story. You know, we still really don't know the entire story of episode 9 just yet.
Yeah, they're doing a really good job at showing us some iconic imagery, but without necessarily revealing any of the context.
The context of the plot, right.
You know, so we don't really know where all this stuff fits in. We just have a bunch of cool images.
Right. Now, we did hear that in this, though, there's a shot of Rey wielding a double-bladed red lightsaber.
Yeah, in a black robe.
In a black robe and everything. So people are, you know, assuming that she's gone to the dark side.
Yep. Palpatine's like, this is the end or something like that. And
your journey is just beginning, or I guess this is the end of your journey or something like that. So it's kind of eerie. Even the poster, though, is kind of, you know.
Well, yeah, the new Rise of Skywalker poster, I thought that was actually one of the cooler posters.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most important things about this is it really shows us that Palpatine is going to have a significant role in this thing.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody can doubt that now.
Yeah, hands down.
You know, I don't know exactly what form. I mean, that's the other thing, too. We really don't know.
Degree. We still haven't seen him yet, which is cool.
There's a lot of theories. Like, one of the theories that I was reading when we were actually getting this news minutes before we were podcasting today was the fact that there's a theory that besides him being like a Force ghost and he's guiding some of this stuff along, there was one that he actually possesses Rey for a bit. Mm-hmm. You know, so I mean, it's going to be a really intriguing, I guess, thing as far as, because you and I have speculated a million times, like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if Kylo went light and Rey went dark? Mm-hmm. You know, everybody assumes it's like, look, we know that we've seen images, both in the poster, everything else, that Kylo and Rey are going to face each other again.
Yeah, they have to.
But how interesting would it be if now Kylo was the light side guy and Rey was the dark side one, but they're dueling again, but they're on opposite sides.
Yeah, I mean, there's that. I mean, then there's some images of Rey throwing her lightsaber, kind of like Thor does, you know, with his hammer, and cutting through some stuff. And
I just hope we actually get an explanation of why she's so powerful.
Yeah.
Because that's the whole reason why I think everybody's so hung up on her lineage. It's not so much that, you know, oh, everybody in Star Wars says, I hate that argument where everybody's like, oh, you just want everybody in Star Wars to be related. It's like, no, you have somebody. And I get sick of these Luke comparisons too. Well, Luke started out, it's like, not like this, he didn't.
All right.
You know, it's like she's hardly even had any kind of a lesson, and all of a sudden she just instinctively knows how to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and this is before she got a hold of the whole Jedi texts and stuff like that. Like now I can hang with the idea of maybe
her being really powerful.
Yeah, like Luke guides her with the Force Ghost thing, and plus she's got the Jedi texts, and who knows who else is popping up.
Yeah, man. Of course, like, you know, she had time to spend with Luke. I mean, all of 8 was her on the island with Luke, basically.
Right, and we weren't there like every second.
Right, so we don't know what was told.
But you know, come on now. I mean, the command that she had with the Force Awakens and stuff like that. It's like,
yeah, I mean, like that, especially the whole like mind trick thing.
Yeah, like she tries, it doesn't work, and then all of a sudden she does. It's like, look, you didn't even know. Like the whole Force thing, almost like it did after the prequels, went to being like some sort of myth, or she thought Luke was a myth.
Well, my whole thing is, how did she even know how to do it?
Right. Right.
You know?
Even if you know it's possible, how do you know how to do it?
Well, no, I mean, even if you like, how do you even know that you can? Like, there's a mind trick thing.
Yeah, like that's a thing.
Because by that time, like, okay, depending on what's going on at that time, Return of the Jedi, Luke was it.
Right.
So he was trying to train other Jedi, and then that failed. At what point before Rey, how did I even, because apparently Rey is like on Jakku, so she's on the outer rim somewhere.
And I'm sure there's no like Jedi for Dummies books out there.
Yeah, and it's just like,
it's kind of like, right. I mean, how do you even know? I mean, and that's the thing. It's like, okay, you can probably read the history and stuff and go, oh, there were these Jedis and they had these Force powers. And people probably knew about the Force because there were other Force users other than Jedi and Sith. Mm-hmm. But even if you know, number one, like you said, how do you even know the mind trick thing is a thing?
Yeah.
And even if you go as far as to say, okay,
I've heard
of it, how would you even know the first thing of how to do it?
Mm-hmm. She started speaking like, well, you will release me from these channels. Like, she just said it like, this is what you say. Like, how do you know?
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that I thought was actually funny about that was it's almost like a little kid going like, well, I don't know, I'll just give this a shot and, see what happens.
Take a shot in the dark, hope it works.
And then at first it doesn't work.
Right.
But then it's kind of like, okay, now she suddenly hangs with it. And then, of course, you got Kylo, who, even though at the time anyway, he wasn't a Sith, he's probing her mind. She reverses that on him and starts probing his. That would almost be like if like Admiral Piet or something started force choking Vader.
Right.
Like, okay, how's that working?
Right.
So it's just things like that I really think they need to explain where she's from and how she just has this natural force ability. I mean, I get it, and you and I have talked about this too, where it's like, well, maybe the force selects somebody, but even if it does, it's like, well, you got to know that that's communicating with you.
Well, the only thing that I can point to is, okay, if you've had this, like, okay, like she says that there's something that's always been inside me and it's awake now, and I don't, like she told Luke, like, I don't know what to do with it. Like, I don't.
But it's awake now, though. The whole thing is like I think she's realizing at that moment, like, wow, this has always been there, and she was just discovering it. I don't think she was using it on Jakku, for instance.
But what I'm saying is, Obi-Wan made the statement in New Hope where he was training Luke on the Falcon, and he with the whole training droid. And he was basically, is trust your instincts. And maybe that's what it is. It's just like, it's an instinctive thing, like, Yeah,
like, okay, maybe she's doing it. She doesn't know it's actually the Force. It's just like, hey, that kind of worked.
It's kind of like Anakin with pod racing. Like, if you look at that, like, okay, that's why they say, well,
or Luke with his racing, T-16s back home and blasting womp rats or whatever.
Yeah, it's like, okay, little Anakin didn't know he was using the Force. It's just,
but okay,
it was an instinctive thing.
I can hang with that, but there's a difference between like flying, having this unnatural flying ability versus like Jedi mind tricks, lightsaber combat, against some dude that, granted, he was wounded.
Right, I was like,
but he's still. Come on now, it's Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
This guy's pretty powerful. I'm just not buying any of this. Something has to be there, and the Rise of Skywalker has
definitely
to explain this. And
I believe that, but I just also think that, like, maybe, like I said, some things are just instinctive that you just kind of... Like,
well, the lightsaber combat I can even hang with to a degree because she's so good with the staff.
Right.
So...
Yeah, but I know what you're talking about, like, as far as the whole, the Force itself. Like,
yeah, like...
I mean, because, like I said, at the end of the thing, like, she's lifting all these multiple rocks at one point. Like, Luke could barely lift, like, 2 in the Empire,
Exactly, and he's the grandson of the Force.
Yeah, so, I mean, I get that.
It's like, come on.
And he had Yoda
Anakin wasn't even there. Exactly, he had Yoda teaching him. Anakin... everybody goes, well, Anakin was super powerful. A, he was the son of the Force. Mm-hmm. B, he was, like, taught by every major Jedi in the whole thing. I mean...
Yeah, during Obi-Wan, Yoda...
Mace...
Everybody.
Everybody. So it just... kind of makes me,
Yeah, I totally get it, though.
Yeah. Well, what about you guys? What do you think about, all this stuff? If you've been following D23, give us some of your best D23 photos on Instagram at head-to-head-SW. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Let us know what you guys think about any of these things that we've talked about thus far. But now we're going to go into our next thing, which is actually almost a continuation in a way of what we've been talking about.
Yeah, we're going to actually have a Duel of the Fates. All right, so this week it's Revenge of the Sith versus Rise of Skywalker. Which one is more anticipated? So think back to what, 05?
Yeah, and I know. I mean, you have to look at it like, okay, this was, in a lot of ways, they're a very similar situation. You could even throw Return of the Jedi in there if you wanted to. Mm-hmm. But one of the things I like about comparing these two movies is the fact that even though Return of the Jedi also was wrapping up a trilogy, there are certain things based on the original trilogy that we were anticipating in both Revenge of the Sith and Rise of Skywalker. Mm-hmm. Even though both of them would have the initials ROS.
True.
One of the biggest things I think that we were looking forward to when it was Revenge of the Sith was, of course, Anakin's turn to the dark side, him becoming Darth Vader. I remember there was all kinds of speculation. Were we going to see him in the suit? Yeah,
right. And, of course, the whole Emperor and Yoda.
The Emperor Yoda, everything's coming to a head. Mm-hmm. It was definitely the Anakin-Obi-Wan battle, which was really anticipated because it had been talked about since shortly after A New Hope came out. The Yoda-Emperor battle, because you knew that had to happen at some point. Mm-hmm. Obviously, how did the Republic fall? Because even, a lot of what we were looking forward to with Revenge of the Sith was actually things that we were anticipating for the prequels, period. Mm-hmm. Because, we didn't know in these prequels where these events would fall.
Right.
For all we knew, the Anakin-Obi-Wan battle could have happened in Episode 2, and 3 could have been the Jedi Purge, and that's actually what I think should have happened, honestly.
Okay.
But, yeah, there was a lot of really... I think the difference is that with Revenge of the Sith, because it was a prequel movie, there were things that we knew had to happen based on the original trilogy, and we were looking forward to actually seeing those things happen. Whereas with Rise of Skywalker, we really don't know how this is going to end because this is open-ended, and this is where it has more in common with Return of the Jedi because we don't know what's happening with these characters. So, and of course, why I say that it actually has a lot to do with our last Cantina segment is because, well, now we're seeing all these images. You got Rey with a dual-bladed lightsaber and a black cloak, and you got Palpatine now featured very prominently in all this stuff, and including in the poster. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, I think that's getting everybody pretty excited.
Yeah. So you're saying Rise of Skywalker is more anticipated than Revenge of the Sith?
No.
Okay.
The reason I'm going to say that, I don't know, it's tough even for me to decide for myself. Mm-hmm. But the reason why I'd say that is because the sequel trilogy actually isn't hitting with the younger generation the way that the other two did. And of course, The Last Jedi left a bad taste in people's mouths. So people are pretty skeptical about Star Wars right now. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily I think it's anticipated among the fans, but I think in the general populace, everybody's just like, no, whatever, we'll see what happens. Mm-hmm. If I like it, maybe I'll go check it out. Revenge of the Sith, on the other hand, was at the height. Star Wars Mania was actually, even though the prequels were generally considered, I don't really want to say bad, but they definitely disappointed some people. People were still really excited. These are characters that people are familiar with. Because you got to think about it, right? With Rise of Skywalker, yeah, we're going to see if Palpatine comes back. Yes, we got to see Force Ghost Luke, and, who knows? Maybe some of these other characters make an appearance. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, this is the story of Rey, of Finn, Poe, whatever. I don't think a lot of people honestly care that much. The toys aren't selling that much. I don't necessarily think that people are on the edge of their seat waiting to see what happens with Finn. On the other hand, the prequel trilogy movies dealt with characters that we all fell in love with in the original trilogy and really wanted to know what happened. So that's why I think Revenge of the Sith was actually the most anticipated, historically speaking.
It's hard for me because I think they both have their own sense of gravitas that accompanies it. I think you have. Well, I'm going to go with, just to be difficult, Rise of Skywalker.
Well, I could see that, and here's a point in your favor is the fact that if you look at the sequel trilogy movies, they actually made more money than the prequels did. Which, is really a weird thing because, in a sense, it would almost tell a different story.
Well, yeah, I think. Well, but to piggyback off you, I think for the same reasons though that you just said why they wanted to see why they love the prequels, because you knew in the sequel trilogy when everybody heard that Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, and Carrie Fisher were coming back to reprise their roles. That got everybody excited because, one, we all knew Harrison Ford was like, I'm not doing Han again. But then when he actually decided to come back, that got everybody excited.
That's why if you had said which was more anticipated, Revenge of the Sith or The Force Awakens, I would have said The Force Awakens, hands down. For two reasons. Number one, as much as everybody wanted to see what happened in Revenge of the Sith to these characters, you kind of know where the story is going to go. It's almost like going to see Titanic. There's no,
the ship
you kind of know the ending.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just how do they get there? That's the part that you want to see. Sequel trilogy, you have no idea where this is going to go. And at the time, when all three of the original trilogy actors signed on, we all thought it was going to be a Han, Luke, and Leia adventure. And that they were going to slowly introduce these new characters that would then eventually maybe carry on.
Take over the mantle, basically.
Yeah, like even in 8, as early as 8, but definitely for a theoretical 10, 11, and 12. What we get instead is a really great Harrison Ford performance as Han Solo, but then he's killed. Well, then we get Carrie Fisher, but then she actually passes in real life. And then you kill off Luke Skywalker. It's kind of like, well, wait a second.
Well, I think that...
So it's not what people thought it was going to be, which is why I think that ultimately, Well,
I think the Rise of Skywalker is more anticipated than Revenge of the Sith because you ultimately... You want to see how JJ is going to try to tie everything together.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think that's what makes it
overall. Now, keep in mind, when I say that Revenge of the Sith is more anticipated, I'm not talking by wide margins here.
Oh, I mean, I know.
I mean, it's
just
kind of one of those things that it can...
It's like by the hair of your nose.
Yeah, and in fact, it's funny because one of the things that I really try to do, even when you send these outlines... a lot of times you might send them like the morning of or the night before we record or whatever. But even if you send them like a couple of days, I'll glance at them to see, what we're going to talk about. But I purposely don't do anything beyond that because I don't want to put any thought into it because I want my responses and our discussions to be almost as if like when we used to do it in the TV studio where we worked. We would just start talking about Star Wars. It wasn't like... You would text me in the morning like, hey, man, let's talk about Lobot today or something. You know what I mean? It's like we didn't plan that. We just talked about it.
Just happened, yeah.
So, I mean, in order to keep that spontaneity, which is why it really was when I was talking and you're kind of like, oh, so which one are you going for? Well, I had to kind of talk through it first. And that's when, it hit me with the Revenge of the Sith because... And it's the only reason why I would go with that. Otherwise, I would go with The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's just Rise of Skywalker because I think, it's Rise of Skywalker for what it is, I think it has something fresh.
Yeah.
I think because now you have, okay, Knights of Ren. What's going to happen with Rey? We're still holding on to her lineage, up until this point.
Well, it's like you said, there's more
there's
loose ends.
Yeah, there's a whole lot. Yeah, exactly. There's a whole lot of loose ends that you got to tie up,
and you don't know where they're going to go. Whereas there's a lot of loose ends in Revenge of the Sith, but you knew the ultimate conclusion.
Exactly. But how is this going to end? And then, of course, you still have Palpatine. Like, how in the world is he coming back? And then you have, where's Rey going to end up? What side is she going to end up on? Especially now at the D23, a lot of people are like, okay, well, when we last left in 8, she was all sold out. And even in the first trailer, sold out to the light side. Now we're seeing images of this. So it's like, okay,
well, we don't know. Maybe that's a vision.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We don't know if this is a vision. We don't know if this is actually going to happen. Maybe she goes for a minute and then comes back. Yeah. We don't know how this is going to play out. So I think that this is the most anticipated because it wraps up everything. It has to conclude from 1 all the way through Rogue One to to 9.
I get it. The only reason, again, one of the things that I'm considering where I think that maybe you're not entirely considering in your argument, because based on everything you said, then, Rise of Skywalker is the easy victor here. But when you say most anticipated, I'm taking everybody, not just fans.
Mm-hmm. I get you. I mean, and don't get me wrong, because, like, for me, like, I remember, like, in 2005, like, sitting in the studio, because it was, like, my birthday gift from you, to go see Revenge of the Sith and opening night. And I remember, like, okay, in my mind trying to figure out, we knew, because they had already kind of been foretold that Yoda and Palpatine were going to have a duel. Mm-hmm. So I was like, man, like, that was already, like, insane to me. And then, of course, we knew, like, okay, the Obi-Wan Anakin duel was going to happen.
Yep.
So I was like, okay. And I remember we were watching, like, the little, remember they on the StarWars.com, they had, like, the little vignettes of showing them, like, we were watching them practice So, like, I remember, like, okay, well, what is this really going to look like? Because it already looked kind of intense then, but to see it fully fleshed out is like, okay, and then, of course, we have to see Vader in the suit for the first time. How does it happen? What does it look like?
Well, I remember our biggest
so
thing
there was so much stuff that's like, as a true fan of the franchise, you got to see how this happens. And of course, those who weren't diehard fans, but who was just, normal fans of the show or the series, I should say. Yeah, they want to go see it because, like I said, it's a pop culture thing. It's Star Wars is everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree with you on that.
One of those things.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, well,
and again, I mean, the one thing that's on your side is the billions of dollars that both the sequel trilogy movies have made. I mean, it's
and I think
more than just hardcore fans are going to see these things, but
of course, because I mean, and they honestly they did it perfectly to an extent, because it's like, okay, you bring back Han Solo and Leia in the first movie in Force Awakens, and there's no Luke at all. So now we're like, okay, well, where the heck is Luke? And then you see him at the very end of it, and then it's like this moment where she's reaching with the lightsaber and handing it to him, and it's his, and then it just goes to credits, and you're like,
it was
what?
So wrong.
It's just like, So of course now you have this thing like, okay, with 8, it's got to have Luke in it. It's got to. So now we're trying to figure out, well, what the heck happened to Luke? Which is why a lot of people went to go see The Last Jedi, especially when you start hearing him talking about, well, it's time for the Jedi to end. And
I think Palpatine might be the reason why everybody wants to go see Rise of Skywalker.
Of course. And that's the draw.
Well, the thing that I think is funny about, when you bring up The Force Awakens like that, it actually reminded me a lot of The Dark Knight for a little bit. Because one of the things that I thought was really cool about The Dark Knight, it actually was more ominous to me.
Oh, yeah.
Was that they would mention the Joker, but you didn't see him.
Oh, you mean You talking about in the actual Dark Knight, or you talking about in Batman Begins when they mention him at the end?
No, in the actual Dark Knight.
Okay.
They, for the first couple of scenes or whatever, they talk about the clown. They talk about, this Joker guy that's sort of running the underworld, but you don't see him right away. He's talked about, but you don't necessarily always see him.
Well, we saw him at the beginning.
Yeah.
That whole bank heist.
Yeah, but after that, though, it's kind of like his presence is felt for a while, more so because he's talked about.
Yeah.
And how he's feared, and then when you see him again, it's like...
Yeah, I will say, like, he had one of the greatest entrances. Like,
oh, absolutely.
Like, when you just hear that laugh...
Yeah.
And it's kind of like it's kind of very...
Yep.
That's an ominous thing, and then you don't even see his face. You see the back of him.
And that's the thing, and it's kind of like there was more... It was almost like his presence was implied for a little bit of that movie. For that chunk of the movie, it's almost kind of how Luke was in The Force Awakens. He was talked about, and his presence is felt, but you don't actually see him. And that, in some ways, made it more powerful.
Yeah.
I think. And then when you see him at the end, it's kind of a big payoff.
Yeah.
Kind of, you can even make the same correlation to The Wizard of Oz. They talk about the wizard the whole movie, but you don't see him until the end. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that was the way, actually, in the original trilogy with the Emperor.
Yep, exactly.
You heard about the Emperor, but you didn't... Yeah, you didn't see him. Then, of course, when you saw him in Empire, it was only in that little hologram, and at that time, that wasn't the original one before they redid it. It was really like, okay, what the heck is this? Well,
and not only that, but besides it, being a different actor, and they didn't show too much of him, the other difference between that and the special edition one is in the original one, there wasn't even that much dialogue. They really expanded the scene.
Yeah, they did.
So, yeah, I mean, exactly. It wasn't until Return of the Jedi that you really fully...
Yeah, when you finally saw him come down on that ship.
Yeah, and even in the beginning of Return of the Jedi, when it's just Vader, and, he's like, well, the Emperor's not as forgiving as I am. You're just like, man, well, you're... kind of not forgiving at all.
Yeah,
so.
You're not the nicest. You're not the employee of the month type.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know, man. I don't really see you rewarding people necessarily, but once again, and it's funny too because in the canon novels, basically the Emperor, it's like he gives Vader a lot of power, but there's a lot of things that he doesn't like. Like he actually, you find out, didn't like the fact that he was force choking all of his people left and right. Like there was one point, it might have been Lords of the Sith. There was one of them where he was basically saying like, dude, seriously, we're kind of running out of guys here. You got to stop doing this.
Yeah, lay off the...
You can't be doing this all the time. I mean, the one thing that I wish had stayed, there was an unscripted... Well, no, there was a scripted thing that wasn't ever shot. I think it was for Return of the Jedi. It ended up being in that one really cool Vader fan film. But they actually had the Emperor force choking Vader. And that would have been kind of cool to see, actually. But,
yeah.
So, I mean, what about you guys? Which ones, I mean, for those of you who are actually around back when, Revenge of the Sith came around versus now, do you think Revenge of the Sith was more anticipated? Do you think The Rise of Skywalker is more anticipated? Which one of these... do you think, not just fans, but basically people in general, which movie do you think was the most anticipated? Let us know at Head to Head SW on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All right, what do we got?
All right, next we have From a Certain Point of View.
All right, this one we're going to talk about the Mandalorian trailer. We're actually going to review it. So we're going to actually do the same thing that we did basically with The Rise of Skywalker. We're going to play it.
Yeah, this was revealed at D23, by the way.
Yeah, this is revealed at D23. And now, they did show some scenes. It wasn't a trailer per se. I guess maybe it kind of was like a teaser trailer. But they actually showed like sort of a teaser, but then they showed some scenes from The Mandalorian at Star Wars Celebration.
Yeah.
But now... at D23, they actually released an official trailer. So it's 1 minute and 35 seconds, so here we go. All right, we're seeing some Stormtrooper helmets and sand. Guy walks by in a boot. You got stormtrooper helmets on poles, which is really cool.
Yeah, spikes. It's really ominous.
Yeah, it's very ominous. Very ominous music.
Even the music,
through.
yeah.
Got this ship flying through, this like foresty planet. Kind of an industrial shipyard scene here. Guys laying chips on the thing. Got Carl Weathers. Hey.
Hello, Creed.
Yep. I just bought Creed 2, by the way.
Ah.
And now the Mandalorian's suiting up, coming off the ship. Got various, a Twi'lek.
Yeah,
walking off to the sunset. Yep. Ooh, almost Phasma-looking stormtroopers there.
Giancarlo Esposito.
Yep. Some sort of a standoff, it looks like. Speeder bikes. The IG droid, which we know is not IG-88.
Yep.
He looks cool, though.
Bounty hunting is a complicated profession.
The Mandalorian's like kicking some butt here.
Yep.
Ooh, that looked like it hurt. Hey, was that carbonite? I didn't notice that the first time I saw that. All right, so then the title, and it talks about how it's streaming on the 12th.
On Disney Plus.
Yep. So there was actually a lot to digest in that trailer. So overall, what were your thoughts?
Well, first of all, it really definitely gave me Rogue One vibes.
Yeah.
Like, it definitely had that look.
Same thing, yep.
It had that
grittiness.
That gritty, it has that Wild Wild West, gunslinger type vibe. He's like the Lone Ranger almost to me. Mm-hmm. I think, it's kind of has that, it's definitely an action adventure, but I see kind of like a, I don't want to compare it to 24, but it kind of has that sense of urgency, or something is going on. Like, there's some political stuff that might be going on with, Carl Weathers, and Carlo Esposito, that other guy who was, he had that standoff in the office.
Yeah.
Like, I just kind of have it has the undertones of like, all right, we kind of know that it's the Wild Wild West out there, but you got people who are still trying to hold on to the government, and people are undermining and backstabbing people. That type of vibe. And I feel like that's kind of where the Mandalorian is. He's kind of like, who is this guy? Why is he here? And then some people know that he's good at what he does, and then other people are trying to, stop him. And he seems very formidable. Like, even like the fight scenes that we saw there, and kind of creative with the whole little grappling hook thing to the leg, and then trapping the dude in the door. Yeah. I'm just like, okay.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, one of the things that I think excites me the most, and by the way, a little shout out to Dave Cossey. He was basically responding to our Facebook post with the Mandalorian. Actually, our friends at Sith Talkers were too. I mean, and of course, Patrick. Patrick's always, he's always there, which is always good. I love our Facebook discussions. Keep them going. CJ Moore, he's also another one that writes us often. But one of the things that I'm really the most excited about actually is the time period. The fact that this takes place pretty much right after Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
The Empire has fallen. Mm-hmm. And you're actually seeing, what does the universe look like with a fallen empire? Yeah, don't have that iron fist,
Well, yeah, and that's definitely established at the very beginning when you start seeing like the stormtroopers' helmets on spikes. Like, it almost takes you back to like Game of Thrones type stuff.
Absolutely, and it's like one of those things where, it's kind of scary because you realize that how volatile the universe was. Like, it wouldn't have taken much for people to want to overthrow these guys. Like, there was a real hatred for the Empire and their rule. And it was only because the Empire was so powerful that nobody dared stand against them. But in a world without the Empire, how stable is it? Mm-hmm. And so that's where I think there's a lot of excitement that's generated within me is, what does this world look like? This destabilized,
society,
the New Republic hasn't yet taken over, but the Empire's gone. It's sort of like, okay, you have this control. And like you said, there's factions of the Empire still very much active and trying to hang on to control. But then there's also almost like a lawlessness, on other planets too. And besides Rogue One, I actually get some Solo vibes, like Solo, a Star Wars story vibes too, like a little bit of an action adventure type of a thing in there. So
there's like the whole scoundrel, everybody's not who they seem type, cloak and dagger type stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like that whole political intrigue thing, like you said, and, people betraying each other left and right. And, there's
just the looks on people.
It's like 24. There's going to be a mole.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a given. But I mean, there's other things too. Like we know that Bosk is going to make an appearance. We saw an IG model droid. It was confirmed at one point. I remember that it was not IG-88. Which I think is a real missed opportunity. I don't understand why you would do that. You introduced IG-88 to us. Why not just have it be him? It's not like this is like 30 years from now. I mean, and he's a droid.
Well, my thing is he's a droid, so it's not like he's going to die. And then, of course, he's around that time period because we saw him on Empire Strikes Back, which is in that timeline.
Yeah, so I mean, but it was good, though, to see... I mean, to us, it's IG-88, no different than the Mandalorian. It's practically Boba Fett.
Yeah. And the cool thing, one thing I will say about the trailer, man, like they nailed it with like the music. Like,
oh, absolutely.
It gives you like those like chills, like, man.
I will say that since seeing this trailer, I am way more excited.
Oh, yeah.
And I was already excited for this.
Definitely.
I mean, what are the top 3 things that you want? It's not even planned, but what are top 3 things that you want to see in this?
I'm really excited to see the role of Carl Weathers and Giancarlo Esposito. I really would love to see what they're going to bring to this world. Just because I've seen them in, other stuff. So I was just like, okay, I wonder what they're going to be like. Are they going to be more
Dutch?
Are they going to be like, kind of characters we've seen before? They're going to be like completely out of the box with this.
I just really hope that Carl Weathers is like, it's all in the hips.
Start playing Eye of the Tiger.
Go to your happy place. Exactly. They mix like all his characters together.
I want him to say there is no tomorrow.
There you go. It's Eye of the Tiger. Eye of the Tiger. But I mean, the thing is that, yes, I would definitely agree. That's one thing I'm looking forward to. Again, the other thing for me, you can go with your number 2 as well, but it's basically just seeing something in this time period. We've never had anything represented, movie or otherwise, maybe except for like comics and stuff like that, but never any live action kind of thing that talks about the immediate aftermath of Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Only the Aftermath trilogy, I think.
Or wasn't it a video game too? That
oh yeah, there might have been.
But I think my second would probably be, I would love to see, I'm anticipating the bounty hunters and how they interact with each other. So like you said, like Bosk is in here, the IG-88 model. Like, okay, do they team up? Are they competing against each other? So like, I would love to see them try to outthink each other, trying to figure out each other's strengths and weaknesses, and like, okay, we're both going after the same person, but how do I beat this person to the punch? You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I think that would be really
kind of like how, even though we didn't get to see this as much as I would have liked, but sort of how they were all looking for Han Solo in Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah. It's almost kind of like a Hunger Game type vibe.
Right.
Like I kind of get that. That's the other vibe I was kind of getting from it too. Like
I can see that.
Like a Hunger Games type thing where it's like, all right, we're all going after the same targets because at this point, there's lawlessness, and that's when you need, and of course, in that type of situation, people owe other folks money, people owe debts. So, hey, people are on the run, and you and I both might be after the same target. So, but I'm, in this day and age, I need my money. Yep. So, how do I outthink
especially with a destabilized, thing.
So, how do I outthink you to get to my target? And then, like, I might get the target, and you're trying to steal it from me because it's all about the money.
Well, in that sense, it's almost like Raiders of the Lost Ark, where you had Belloc and Indiana Jones, and they were always trying to one-up each other.
Or Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Yep, that's another good one.
Yep.
What about your number 3?
Number 3.
Well, I'll go first. 'Cause my number 3 actually ties in with your number 2. So, yes, my number 3 would be the bounty hunters, but I'm also looking forward to bounty hunters or any other familiar character. Will we see Ahsoka pop up? Will we see, any of the familiar characters that we have from not just the movies, but like anything, comics?
Books.
There's rumors that Cad Bane might show up in this.
Yeah.
So it's like, anything. I'm curious to see what familiar characters. We know Bosk, the IG droid, even though it's not 88, it's familiar. Mm-hmm. Who are we going to see that might pop up in this, and in what capacity?
Okay. I think my third one would be just, honestly, what's the Mandalorian story?
Yeah, I guess that would be a good thing to
like
anticipate, right? I mean,
it's like, okay, well, who is this particular Mandalorian? What's his background? Where did he come from? What's his motivation for things?
Well, exactly, but and honestly, that ties into my number 3, because are we going to see Bo-Katan? Are we going to see, oh man, I blanked. The girl from Rebels. Not Hera, the other one.
Yeah.
Sabine. Yeah. Sabine. It's like, will we see any of these people who are actually Mandalorians pop up?
Yeah. Or will the Darksaber as a bonus one pop up?
Absolutely. See, these are all things that, could happen. But what about you guys? What are you looking forward to? First of all, what'd you guys think of the trailer? Let us know at Head-to-Head SW on any of the thing. Start a discussion with us. We have some really good Twitter and really good Facebook discussions with some of you guys. We'd like to have more of them. I hate to say it, but probably the biggest discussion we had with the most people was that one guy that was basically saying we were almost like pandering because we liked like how he hated The Last Jedi. Remember that one guy?
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of you guys actually, came to our defense, and turned out this guy wasn't even listening to our podcast, so I have no idea why he's commenting.
Just trolling.
Yeah, probably trolling. But anyway, with all you guys, what'd you guys think? All right, well, after all this stuff at D23 and, just all these trailers and images and, we're getting bombarded with all this information, it's time now to clear your mind. Well, actually, it's clearing your mind, but our mind has to stay active because we get to answer your questions. So, hey.
Well, first up at bat. This has been submitted by the Han Talks First podcast.
Right, which actually came to us through the Sith Talkers. Guys at Sith Talkers brought this to our attention.
And here's the question. If you were a Jedi, what would be your strongest force power, and what color lightsaber would you have?
Well, go ahead, because I'm sure I already know yours. I know yours. You're going to say force choke. Come on, I know.
I mean...
Red lightsaber, maybe?
Honestly, I would probably want something more like, I don't know, I guess my telekinesis, of course, would be strong, but I mean, it wouldn't necessarily be for like force choking. I think it would be more so like being able to like grab, like on Force Unleashed.
Well, and the thing is, too, is like your strongest force power. I mean, I guess a lot of it depends on what they actually mean by that. Like, is it the one that you tend to use the most?
The most, yeah, or the strongest.
Or is it the thing that you're just the strongest at doing in the Force?
Yeah, like there's specializations. Because, you got people like Force healers. You have...
Oh, yeah.
You got 4 people who can, of course, force choke, that's an ability. Like, you got lightning, you got, that type of stuff.
But I think another way that you can look at this is almost like what power is sort of like your go-to power. Like, what one do you anticipate using the most?
Honestly, I probably would use the Mind Probe.
Okay.
I think
what about lightsaber color?
Purple.
Little
Going mace. Yep.
It is cool.
It is.
I admit.
And it's my favorite color, so I got to rock with it.
Well, red's my favorite color, but I don't know. Maybe I'd probably go for a red lightsaber. I don't know. I almost need a pack of Skittles or something so I can see like all the colors that are available. Maybe a nice pink.
Oh, past that.
Fuchsia or, some weird Crayola color like goldenrod or...
That's the 3PM model.
Charcoal or something.
Dark saber.
I don't know, man. I'm probably just going to go for some classics. Force lightning and red lightsaber. I'm going to have to go Sith.
Oh, wow.
All the way.
Yeah. Okay.
That would probably be, of course, if you were a Jedi.
Yeah, that's
the
what I'm saying.
question does say, and unfortunately, according to lore now, it's like it's only red because of the fact that the thing bleeds or whatever when you use it. So I might have to go purple too. I always thought the purple lightsaber just looked so cool.
Oh yeah, and his hilt was awesome too.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. What's your favorite lightsaber hilt? Ooh. I'd probably have to go with Dooku.
Dooku's is the most creative, I think.
Yeah, it was.
But I think my favorite, looking.
There's an elegance to Dooku's.
It is, and it fit. Like I said, it totally fit this character. I'm probably gonna go with. I love Vader's. I love the way Vader's look.
Yeah, Vader's look cool. I actually also thought that Luke's Return of the Jedi saber was really cool.
Yeah,
that hilt was kind of cool.
It was kind of weird though, because I know it was
kind of looked like a flashlight.
Yeah, it was based off
what it was.
It was based off Ben's, of course.
Yeah,
Obi-Wan's basically.
Yeah,
but I think I was going to say either Qui-Gon's original one or.
I think Kylo's is really cool.
Yeah, it's a no for me, dog. I can't. That whole crossblade thing, I get it. It has a more...
Well, but think about it. We're talking about the hilt, not necessarily the way the blade comes out.
Oh, well, the hilt, but it still has the... Now it has the little...
I'm just saying. Just said it was cool. It was...
You're right. I digress. But no, I think...
So, not a fan of the cross...
No.
The crossguard
no, not at all.
Destabilized lightsaber, huh?
No. But like I said, I think my favorite hilts, honestly, would be Mace, because that's actually had gold on it, so I thought that was awesome.
Doubt hilt.
Hey. Vader's, and then Qui-Gon's.
I'd have to go for probably Dooku is definitely probably my favorite hilt. Mm-hmm. Followed by Vader, followed probably by Maul. I always liked that double-bladed lightsaber.
Oh, the double-bladed thing was cool.
Or maybe Rey.
You know what, though? I have to, and I didn't... Palpatine's was kind of sweet, too.
Actually, yes. I keep forgetting about his, yeah. Palpatine's was actually really cool. I'm going to, forget Maul. Palpatine's going in there.
Sith all the way, huh?
I guess so.
You went Dooku, Vader, and Palpatine.
Oh, guess if you're going to have a theme, you might as well stick to it. All right, who's our next question? I should say, what's our next question?
Yeah, who's our next question?
From whom is our next question?
Yeah, there you go. This is
we are grammatically correct, yes.
How about this, the head-to-head English class?
Yes, head-to-head, a grammar podcast.
How did Anakin sense...
I'm just thinking like verbs versus conjunctions. That's our duel of fates. Today on the Cantina, use of commas and compound sentences. I'm sorry, go ahead.
This is what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Lauren Sconer. She asked the question, how did Anakin not sense Leia after he found out about Luke? Wouldn't the appearance of Luke make Vader more sensitive?
No, because here's the thing that's funny about that. There's a lot of canon stuff that's dealing with this that actually is fresh on my mind. That's why I can jump into this one. Because honestly, I wasn't even looking at this question. I know, it sounds like I couldn't wait to do it, But literally, I am really, really reading this question as you were just telling us. So the idea is that obviously hiding Luke in plain sight, Vader would never want to go to his home planet. So a lot of times people did say, well, how come he didn't sense all this stuff in the Force? And pretty much, it's kind of one of those things that you have to think about, the fact that when people are reaching out into the Force to sense things, it's not like they're just like spider sense or something. A lot of times they reach out. He didn't even necessarily, I mean, he knew that Padme was pregnant, but according to, what Palpatine told him, it's kind of like, well, she died. Well, he assumed that she died before giving birth to the kids. He didn't know they gave birth.
Well, did he even know he had twins to begin with?
Well, he didn't know he had twins.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't think he knew he had twins.
He didn't know he had twins. He didn't even find out about Luke until he was actually trying to figure out more about this pilot that blew up the Death Star.
Because he knew he felt the Force with him.
Yeah, he felt the Force with him. He's like, well, wait a second, who's this guy now? Then he finds out his name, and then it's like, oh, dude, this is like my kid. Okay, well, to him, it's kind of like you said. He didn't know that there were twins, so he had no reason. Because the thing that's funny, and this is why this question to me is actually relevant, is because how many times has Leia been in the presence of Vader?
Well, a lot. That was going to be my thing. It's just like, because how does she not, like, and I guess maybe because if she wasn't using the Force, then maybe it didn't register to Vader. But you would think that, like,
well, he would have no. Well, I mean, and he would have no reason. I mean, hey, who knows? He might have thought she was hot, and kind of like, hey, chick kind of reminds me of Padme. It's like, if I were 20 years younger, maybe not in the suit. But the thing is that it goes back to that. Her name is Leia Organa. He assumes it's Bail's daughter. He has no real reason to even reach out to the Force. Even, and like you said, she wasn't really using the Force. All of her Force powers, once she sort of realized it, and that's probably what made her a good senator. This goes back to what you and I were talking about with Rey and stuff, or Luke, and it's kind of like, okay, if you're already a pilot, the Force is kind of making you a better pilot, but you don't realize that's what it is. You're just doing things on instinct, not understanding that you're really reaching out to the Force.
Right.
But as we know, the Force also partially controls your actions, and it also obeys your commands. There is a two-way street with the Force. If you're not tapping into that, then there's no real reason. Also, by the time Vader was probably dealing with Leia, she was more or less like a teenager, mid to late teens. So by that time, Yoda might have actually had his hands in clouding the dark side, which he was clearly doing during the original trilogy, much the same way Palpatine was clouding the light side in the prequels.
Right.
So there's probably some of that too. So I don't know. Yeah. You got anything to add to that, or?
No, I think you about covered it.
All right.
I think that's, yeah. I just.
No, you said that about covered it.
Yeah, that's right. We're done here.
All right. Well, I guess that's going to wrap up our show for this week. Hopefully you guys reach out to us, follow us, actually, at Head to Head SW on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Don't forget to go to our website, which is headtoheadswpodcast.com. There's stuff. We're starting to populate even more things there now. We're getting some blogs out. We're doing stuff. I still got to put my blog from Thrawn Alliances up. It's a very good book. I highly recommend it. I am now into treason. So far, it's shaping up to be just as good or even better.
It's treason, then.
Yeah, that's right. So we'll see how that goes. Come and listen to us next week. You actually should be subscribing to our podcast, by the way. But but make sure, you come to us next week, because another thing that they talked about at D23 was the Obi-Wan series. So, we didn't want to put too much stuff into this week's episode.
Right. I'm going to give everything its just due.
Yeah. So, next week we're going to address some more stuff, D23. Main thing is the new Obi-Wan series that they announced. So, check us out next Monday. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.